Joining me now is Julissa Arce, the author of today's Velshi Banned Book Club feature, You Sound Like a White Girl, the case for rejecting assimilation. She joins me now. Julissa, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to me about this rejection of assimilation. You're not suggesting that newcomers to this country don't become part of the whole, but I think you're I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think you're talking about pluralism, right? You're talking about the idea that we can be part of this whole by being ourselves with our own identity and succeeding, as opposed to fitting into a pre-established mold.
Right. So what I'm doing in You Sound Like a White Girl is really making two points as it relates to your question. One is that we should be able to find belonging in this country and happiness and success without having to give up so many parts of ourselves and what truly makes us unique and beautiful. And the other thing that I'm doing is questioning, what is this whole? Right? And who gets to belong in that, in sort of in that whole. And I think you said it in the introduction, which is that I'm rejecting the idea that the way to be American is to aspire to whiteness, that there's a different way in which we can remain true to ourselves and still find the things that we want in this country.
You know, I relate to a lot of this as an immigrant to this country. And I guess the question of, fitting into society's expectations, is that something that you think American society imposes upon us, or something we do to ourselves?
I think it's a little bit of both. And I will say that I think, my parents' generation had a very different idea of what it meant to belong in this country and how we should go about it. And so assimilation was both imposed on me by my own parents and also by society at large. I talk about in the book about lacking mirrors through which I could see my reflection, whether it was in the history books that I was reading in school, in the movies that I watched, in the novels that I read, and how I did not find people who looked like me, who had my experiences in those venues. And so it sort of becomes really hard to stay true to who you are when you don't see your reflection anywhere. Then, as a child in particular, you sort of start absorbing everything you do see around you.
It was kind of surprising to me. We often have books on the book club where it's easy to figure out why they were banned. This wasn't obvious to me. When did you find out the book was banned anywhere? And why do you think a book documenting your actual lived experience would be so problematic for American readers?
So my book is part memoir. I've written two other memoirs before, and this one only is partly memoir. Really, right. The sort of meat of the book, from my perspective, is really talking about the history that we're not taught in school, right? So, and it is actually that history that has really taught me just how much I belong in this country. Mexicans have been in this land since before it was called the United States. And so I think it is those pieces of the book where I am sort of sharing a lot of the real truthful history that I never learned in school. And I'm sharing that history in the book. And I think that is that history and that knowledge that has gotten the book banned in many Texas districts, particularly in Texas, because there's a lot of Texas history in the book as it relates to the real history of the Alamo, the real motivation for sort of that Texas independence fight. And I believe that it is those pieces.
Right. Which, that's a pretty critical issue in Texas, right? Because people, the view is there's so much history in Texas that if you start telling these stories that Julissa wants to tell, we're going to lose out on some other story that we want to tell. The Texas story is sort of a microcosm, but a very large one in America.
That's right. And, I think that the story of sort of when we talk about sort of the Alamo and Texas independence and eventual annexation into the United States, I think it misses a lot of information. And growing up in Mexico and learning the other side of the story, right, the Mexican point of view of Texas independence, it kind of gave me a more holistic view of it. And again, I think it is those points in history. We often say that for many Mexicans, the border crossed us. Mm-hmm. We didn't cross the border.
I've heard that.
And I think that's one of the key points that I try to make in the book, and that in that history is what really roots me to know that I do belong in this country and that I don't need to change anything about myself in order to claim it as my own.
The memoir is broken up, or the part memoir, as you say, is broken up into two parts. Part one is called The Lies We're Told, and the second part is called Embracing Our Truth. Why'd you organize it that way?
Well, I think for me, it's organized that way because that was my journey, right? It was first sort of believing in these lies that if I just spoke English, if I just found success, if I just sort of aspired to whiteness and try to be as close in proximity to whiteness, that those were the things that were going to help me to belong. And I definitely did all of those things, right? I learned how to speak a language. I went to college. I worked on Wall Street. I had a very successful career when I worked there. And yet I was still met with so much resistance about whether or not I belonged in this country. It's sort of an anecdote, but I think one that really reflects the experience of many Mexicans and many Latinos in this country. And I would say even other immigrants, which is this question about where are you from, right? When people ask you where you're from, people ask me where I'm from. And sometimes I just want to say San Antonio. I don't want to give my whole life story, right? And I say San Antonio and people will say, no, but really, where are you
really
from?
from?
Right, where are you really from? Where are your parents from?
Right.
Because what they're really saying is, I cannot imagine someone that looks like you would just simply be American, right? There always has to be another explanation. And so those are the lies. And the second part of the book is the second part of my own journey, which is that I learned how to reclaim my language. I learned how to reclaim my Spanish. I learned how to reclaim my identity and my history. And it is in that reclamation of the things that I lost while I was assimilating that I have really found a much deeper sense of belonging, and to know that that belonging was always there. It was always within my community. And it is because of those things that made me different that I am where I'm standing today.
Let's talk about your journey. In order to work at Goldman Sachs, you had to forge documents. You essentially lived a double life for years. You climbed up that Wall Street ladder. You were an intern. You became a vice president at one of America's biggest and most important financial institutions. During that time, you couldn't apply for a credit card. You didn't drive with a valid license. You didn't travel outside the country because you were undocumented. You essentially lived a double life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and it was, I've spoken about that journey quite a bit in the past, and I think that the sort of biggest takeaway for me is just how embarrassed I used to feel about telling that story, right? About saying I worked on Wall Street, I used fake papers, I wasn't able to become a citizen. But when I look at it now, I think, yes, I broke the law, but the law was also breaking me. And the law was breaking my family apart. And there is this misconception that there is such a thing as doing it the right way in America. And that is one of the biggest lies that we tell immigrants, to do it the right way. Because in my experience, and when you look at the history of immigration policy, it has been race that has driven immigration policy more than any other factor. And so to do it the right way, there doesn't really exist. I mean, we're seeing sort of the attacks on things like asylum and the ability to seek asylum today, and we've seen it for the for in past administrations as well. And so this concept and this idea of doing it the right way is really sort of my biggest takeaway from my experience, that I believed that lie, and I allowed myself to be embarrassed and ashamed by that lie. Where I look at it now, and I think it is the laws that are wrong, and we need to change those laws so that more people can have access to doing it in a legal pathway.
Julissa, what a great conversation. So much more to talk about in so little time, but thank you for doing this. Thanks for writing the book. Thanks for your story. Julissa Arce is the author of today's Velshi Banned Book Club feature, You Sound Like a White Girl.